Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. The Black Business Council says it's concerned that an entity such as Business Leadership South Africa could sponsor an off-the-books investigation at Eskom. Former Eskom CEO Andre de Ruyter has reportedly solicited funding from private businesses to uncover alleged corruption at the ailing power utility. The BBC says it views this as a security breach for the country, which needs to be addressed. The Council's President, Elias Monache, joins me now in studio for more. Very good evening to you. Welcome to Newzroom Afrika, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mpo, and to the listeners at home.
You've expressed your discomfort around this investigation. Talk to us about some of your concerns.
I think one of the things that we need to address as a nation is the sole primary of Eskom to provide energy, electricity to the citizens and to the industry at large. Now, the appointment of Andre de Ruyter was precisely then to deliver that mandate to the country, not to embark on clandestine and covert operations that we have seen in the recent past. Now, our concern is primarily on the basis that there are law enforcement agencies that are supposed then to deal with a question of corruption, the question of any other unlawful and criminal activities. Mm-hmm. Now, to the extent that, again, we have seen in the recent past where one of the business individual who was sitting on the board of Eskom happened to be the CEO of the BLSA, Business Leadership South Africa, which is Vuso Mavuso. Now, again, there is an element of a conflict of interest in the sense that the same individual who demonstrated arrogance to the core, if one were then to talk about that, colluded with the CEO, instead of holding the CEO to account on his failure to deliver electricity to the country. Instead, they end up dealing with covert and clandestine operation. And that's the reason why we're basically saying these are criminal activities that are supposed then to be addressed by the country. The third part is around allegations that were labeled against a number of individuals without any evidence, without any substantive information being brought forward. I mean, the interview that Andre, during, I think, before his departure at Eskom,
yes,
he was interviewed where he basically alleged that there are a number of high-profile ministers and politicians that are involved in these criminal activities. And to date, no information, no evidence whatsoever. And it then means that some of the information is precisely from what we are now covering in terms of the information that was distributed the past few days in the country to say there's no evidence, there's no collaborative information in any form or shape where you have mentioned the name of Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, Minister Gwedemandash. You have mentioned the previous Deputy President, Didi Mabuza. And again, there is no evidence whatsoever. Equally so, you have mentioned even Russia as a country to say number of the sabotage. Again, there was an allegation that Russia, they perceived Russia to be involved into this thing. And again, you are bringing a foreign country into specific issues that are supposed then to be addressed by the country. And we're then saying, in the main, for us, it then shows and confirms that we are now dealing with a proxy war, if one were to borrow those words, because now we are then bringing other countries in our domestic affairs in terms of failing to deliver electricity to the country. Fourthly, we're then saying one of the issues is around the economic impact and implications for the country in an event where these matters are not being addressed.
Before we go into the fourth point that you want to raise, In stating reasons, BLSA said that for being involved in the funding, they said that they considered Eskom to be a significant risk to both the economy and the country, which is why they provided the funding. And are you saying that your gripe with this is the sort of investigation that took place and the other candidates involved in that investigation? I understand someone who was involved in the so-called it was called the Ostrich Project.
Let's perhaps look at this thing differently. Business ordinarily, they will support and sponsor activities for government. They will fund. For example, business, we funded Solidarity. Yeah. Businesses have funded and established what is called the Resource Mobilization Fund. It was launched a month ago. Business have funded even the law enforcement agency in terms of providing the resources and money. However, the funding that business have provided, there are not strings attached, in the sense that you don't then provide money and appoint people that must then deal with the investigation. You don't provide money and then bring what I would call people that they are dodgy characters in the process. Yeah. And because if you again, we then look at the current state of the affairs, I mean, Fivers was part of this thing, and he then brought a person by the name of Tony Oosthuizen. And Tony Oosthuizen have been known as an apartheid operative that was involved in killing a number of people in the country. And you are then asking yourself, if indeed we want them to deal with corruption and any form of criminality, you then report the matter to the police, because business also have concluded what is called the Memorandum of Understanding with law enforcement agency in terms of how can we assist in terms of sourcing funding and doing all those things. But it doesn't mean that a state-owned entity that is part of what I would call it a national security point is then caught up in a process where instead of providing the primary function, you are then involved in a clandestine activity and a covert operation where you then bring other people then to look at specific issues. And I'm saying our gripe is that business leadership South Africa, they're not supposed then to be part and parcel of the entire process. You provide funding, then you walk away. Yeah. That's the point that we are raising. We're then saying, because again we have seen the relationship between the previous CEO of Eskom and Vusi Mabuso, even during the parliamentary processes, where instead of addressing the issues that were posed by members of parliament, she becomes so abrupt and arrogant to the core. And these are the issues that we're raising. It then shows that there is a hidden agenda at the heart of this process. And hence, as business, we're then saying we need then to relook at the entire thing to its final conclusion. Yeah. In terms of a proper investigation need then to be done, where there are allegations that are labeled against individuals, and there is no evidence whatsoever up until to this day.
Yes, because we saw Andre de Ruyter appearing before Scopa, and you know, there was a lot of criticism that he didn't name individuals. And that in itself formed a lot of, caused a lot of attention. Why did he not name the individuals?
That's one of the areas that you are saying. If indeed you remember, at the level of a CEO, you have an obligation, a legal obligation to report any criminal activity to law enforcement agency. And if, for example, in whatever form or shape, law enforcement agents, whether it can be the Hawks, it can be the Special Investigation Unit, if they were to say we don't have the capacity to do this thing, surely they can then utilize the private agencies to assist them in the investigation, but not to the extent where you then embark on a clandestine operation where you then do this thing, but not only wait for the conclusion of the investigation, you then start naming people without any substantial evidence before you. And that's part of the issue that we have raised. And as a result of that, you are then being defocused. You're not addressing the core responsibility of Eskom as an electricity or energy company in terms of providing what is required to the citizens and even to the corporate South Africa. And these are the points that we are raising to say this thing is uncalled for. It's not supposed then to be done the way it was been done. And hence, we are calling for a proper investigation, including even some of the individuals that have been mentioned, to lay charges against the individuals that are involved in this process.
You speak about a hidden agenda.
Yeah.
What do you believe that hidden agenda to be?
I mean, firstly, the entire duration of Andre Eskom, he didn't deal with the maintenance of the fleet. For the entire duration, he didn't address what we call the base load in terms of both the coal power stations, including even gas and nuclear. Instead, he spent time talking about the renewables. And that is the agenda that you are then saying. It then shows and demonstrates clearly that one of the agenda that he was pursuing all along is then to push for renewables at the expense of running down both the nuclear and the coal power stations, because they are looking at what is called just transition. And this is the critical aspect that we are saying. No country in the whole globe that they have ever industrialized the economy by utilizing renewable energy, because it's not what is called dispatchable energy in terms of security. The only secured and security of electricity, it will come from, or energy will come from gas, nuclear, and coal power stations. And this is the agenda that we're saying. It then shows clearly now that for the past period, this is a clear orchestrated plan that you are going to run down the entire Eskom, you then sell it off. And these are some of the issues that we have raised, not once, we have raised them consistently when we called for his head to roll, to be fired. And now, all of a sudden, there are a number of issues that are coming. Let alone import, number of issues, again, that we have raised during the entire process as part of the agenda. They've, one, terminated contracts of black imaging companies that were supplying certain products to Eskom at the back of, I would call it a hearsay, that they are corrupt. But up until to this day, there's no information that is forthcoming. I can mention Econ Oil as a classical example. Nothing happened. There is no factual evidence or information that suggests that that individual or company was embarked, was caught up in any corrupt activity, let alone the fact that the same individual basically blacklisted them not to do business in the country, despite the fact of didn't follow any single processes. There is another company in Limpopo where they've supplied certain products. Again, this is a black young entrepreneur that have supplied certain things to Eskom, was not being paid at all. You went to court, and the court basically said Eskom is in the wrong. They need them to pay that individual the value of between 8 to 10 million. Up until to this day, nothing happened. And I'm saying you then look at that part of the agenda is basically then to take out all black suppliers within the Eskom and then replace them with either white-owned companies. And we've seen that thing in action. And there are a number of other incidences where we've raised with them at Eskom to say we're not happy with these processes, including even relevant ministers to say these are the issues that need them to be addressed. Because in a sense, since his arrival at Eskom, we have now seen the reversal of the gains that we achieved in terms of a transformatory agenda. And these are some of the issues, again, we have raised with Treasury to say we are concerned to the extent and the degree of transformation that have been reversed at Eskom. And these are some of the components that we're saying they form part of a broader clandestine program and agenda in terms of reversing the gains of the black business people and professionals in the country, let alone professionals at Eskom that have left during his period. And again, all these things bear testimony that there is a concerted effort and well-orchestrated program in terms of dealing with black professionals and black business people. And again, we don't think it was a right thing for Vusima Busi to basically then collude with the Eskom CEO rather than holding him to account on his failure to deal with the issues at hand in terms of addressing lack of maintenance across the the coal power stations of Eskom.
Very well. We're going to have to leave it there for now, and thank you for your time, for joining us in studio. Of course, we will be looking to get the reaction of Busi Mavuso herself. The council's Elias Monache